Well, hello, hello. It's a whole new world. We've come from the bottom of the valley and we have traversed up, and here we are at the top of this glorious mountain because we have ascended to the new heady heights of YouTube. I can take this out now. It's good to have you here. I see not everyone's joined us yet, but it's our first broadcast on YouTube. Things look technically to be going quite swimmingly so far, but let's not jinx it. Although, just to be fair, I'm not actually that superstitious. But welcome. It's Friday Connect with Recovery Direct, and today we're going to talk about a few things, but of course it's all about community. So these live sessions are a safe space to connect with each other, for like-minded people to gather around the so-called fireplace, or at this point we're at the top of a mountain range. Beautiful kind of midsummer day here in this location. I thought I've had enough of having a wintry kind of experience. We're doing something different today. So today we're at the top of this beautiful mountaintop, and it's wonderful to have you all here. I do understand that because we had this change from Facebook to YouTube, although we will cross-post stuff back to Facebook, it can be quite difficult for some people to understand how this all works. But here we are. We're all here together. And I think what's really important is that we start off today like we would every single time with an intention. And that's what we're going to do. So today I'd love you on this beautiful Friday, whatever space that you're in, whatever frame of mind you're in, I'd love you to hold the thought in your heart and in your soul that you are abundant, that you can recognize your abundance in all things that you've experienced. Recognize your abundance in all things that you've experienced. You know, all that you've gained, all that you've loved, and also all that you have lost. Abundance is a beautiful way of seeing the world, because it means that even loss is gaining something. And of course that's very difficult to understand if we've just lost, or if we're about to lose something, but it is a collection rather than a less of. So I invite you today to hold the fact that you are abundant. I recognize my abundance in all things I've experienced, all I've gained, all I've lost. And I think this might be a really, really beautiful way to hold your Friday. And today I wanted to talk a bit about the RD course, the recoverydirect.net course. And I think it's important to kind of, it is kind of abundant. It's a very, very long course. So Doug's asked me if I can just take you through some of the modules and show you what this course has to offer, and why we've put those certain modules in there. What is the reasoning behind these modules that we have put in? So what I've done is I've loaded up the website here, and if one goes to recoverydirect.net, you'll see the landing page, which should be available to everyone. Just want to make sure the stream is working okay. Let me have a look here. Okay, good. I think it's all working fine. It says the stream health is good. It says my stream health is good. Isn't that nice? My stream health is good. So if you come to the landing page, and that's at recoverydirect.net, you'll see that you're able to see the different courses that are available. And of course, there's different courses here at the moment. We have 3: Mental Health Made Simple, Yoga from Home, and Stop Smoking in 10 minutes a day. And what might be very important to know is that this course here has been discounted. And this is the one that I want to talk about. But because if you click on it, you can see the course here. And 4,000 people have enrolled. That's very nice. Thank you very much, whoever you are. I hope you get a lot of value out of it. I hope it serves you. But I want to talk a bit about each of these kind of separate areas that we kind of look at, and why we've put them in, and why they are so important in here. And after I've done that, I'm going to talk a little bit about roles, ascribed roles and achieved roles, just for some psychoeducation on a Friday. So first I wanted to say that we have to start at the beginning when we're going to talk about mental health, and that's what this first one is. What's going on with subconscious thoughts? What powers us as a human being? What actually motivates us to do certain things? And this goes into quite a specific and quite a lot of detail on the unconscious, the mechanics by which we kind of live and breathe and act and do, the way we feel, think, see, hear, and absorb the world. These are very important. And the module is a free module for those of you who just want to see if there's a kind of, if this is something that you would enjoy or something that you would be able to watch or wouldn't mind seeing. And so you can click on that one and you can watch that for free. And then the rest do cost money. I think there is a discount code. We might get that shortly. So in this module, it goes through what are the basic mechanics? What causes me to act, think, and feel the way that I do? And then once we've finished that module, and the modules are all approximately an hour in duration, just under. Some of them are just under an hour. The second one is, psychological development. So we understand the mechanics by which we are actually moving and seeing and through the world, and our decision making and our histories and how much our histories inform the present. As Freud said, we are what we are because we have been what we've been. And T.S. Eliot said it's not the past so much that matters, but it's the pastness in the present. And that first module talks about how much that informs how much of how we think, act, and feel, and see and do in the world today at this moment. And then the second module goes into what does that actually look like? What's actually going on in those stages, in those phases as you're growing up, just after birth, to being a young toddler, and then going into kind of preschool and then early adulthood, kind of being kind of a young person versus a early adult. And that second module there on psychological development or psychosocial development goes through all of that. And then the course takes a bit of a turn, because what it does is it starts talking about what can happen when we are growing up that will have implications for later in our life. And that's what the third module is all about. The third module is about what can happen in our lives that can have an effect later, and detrimental in some ways, but also just to fully understand it, not to be pessimistic about it, but to understand that if we have adverse childhood experiences or developmental trauma, or what kind of social learning did we have, all of these things are very important to know, and they're all in that third module there on developmental trauma. Because it's a word that's often bandied about. It's become incredibly popular in pop psychology online. Everyone talks about it. But this shows actual studies in a way that is easy to digest. All of these courses, even all these modules, even though they are just under an hour each, are paced quite slowly. There's a lot of data, a lot of value in them, but they're paced quite slowly, so you can in fact get value from them. And then once we've moved from trauma, we look around at emotional wellness. So here we have mental health and stigma, and this is an important module, and in many ways people should be watching that first. People should be watching that module first. That's the kind of module that is super important to help you understand that mental health has not always been seen in a progressive light. Mental health has often stigmatized individuals, and because of that, people haven't asked for help. So if you are tiptoeing into your own kind of understanding of your need to take care of yourself and your own mental health, that mental health and stigma is a very good one to begin with. And I think you can watch them in any order you want, although the free one for sure is the You Are Possibility. And then we have the module that the module that this entire course was really built around, which is, how does addiction work? Why does addiction even exist? What is its underlying mechanic? And this is important because when we're thinking about treating mental health issues, we need to understand before we treat. There's no point in saying, I have a treatment, and just throw it on something and thinking that's going to work. Hi, Doug. Good to see you. I can see Doug's joined us in the chat. It's good to see you, Doug. It's nice to have you here. I like this new interface that YouTube has given us, real-time chat. Very nice. Apparently top chat as well, which is good. So we see that in this module, and this is was the gearing, but of course this entire course encompasses so much more than just addiction. In fact, addiction is a very, very small part of it. Addiction is just one area of symptoms that we can get if our lives become in some ways distressful or unmanageable. So this module there with addiction deals with that, and again around an hour. And then it kind of changes gear again, because then it likes to ask some questions around what have the practical implications been, and show you what kind of environments, and also give you tools. A lot of these modules will not just have psychoeducation within them, but they will also absolutely, they will also have skills as well, and I'll get to that in a bit. But in parenting in adult life, what we're saying in that one, in that module there, is the way you relate to other people today, loved ones, children, parents, siblings, whoever it might be, has a lot to do with parenting. Now that sounds a lot like the modules above, but it is and it isn't. It goes into more detail around the kind of parenting we received, and maybe some of the reasons why we act, think, and see and feel and relate the way we do. And there's two parts to that as well. And then we go on to a very important and I think very, very well-worn area of society, which is the quest for individuality versus the fear of rejection and abandonment. And this is sometimes referred to when it is in a system of individuals, or in a family system, or in a relationship system. This is referred to as enmeshment. And the lifelong intrapsychic, and that's why the module comes quite far down in the course, but the lifelong goal to be a healthy, happy human being is to individuate, to become congruent, to become a sense of your own authority, your own agency, to act, do, and think and feel your needs, and to do this in a way that has meaning to you and creates meaning in the world and outputs. And that deals a lot with that. So if I've been in environments where I've grown up with different kinds of ascribed roles, and I'm getting to ascribed roles after I finish off here, if I have certain ascribed roles growing up, or if I have certain enmeshments with parents and parental systems, like maybe I was a young adult child and I had to look after my parents or my siblings, that module there in the course goes a long way to explore that, and also give you some tools by which you can help manage some of those things that come up if I feel enmeshed, and asks good questions and offers some solutions around that as well. And then the last two are really all about skills. Transactional styles refers to how do we talk to other people? Why do some conversations feel stuck? Why do some conversations that we have feel stuck? Why do I get in with my partner or with my parents or my children, whatever it might be? Why does it feel stuck? And the second to last module on transactional styles goes a long way to explain this, It shows why we use these transacting styles with others. And it is a fascinating module. Of all the modules, it's sometimes the most exciting because it's on the ground stuff. It shows you in real time how these interactions work and how they can affect us because of the way we interact with others. And then finally, there's actually two skill modules, but I think they're both inside that one on mental health resilience, which is basically having a way of building into internal resilience, but using skills to do it. So communication skills, journaling, reflection, understanding the flow of, for example, addiction in a kind of understanding self-inhibition, and also being able to operationalize and use skills to start solving some of these, as Freud calls, the problems of human life and motives. And that's the course presented by yours truly. And then there are links down here. But it is a zinger. There is a lot of content in there. It is a lot of content. I think over 11 hours of content. So it's really an amazing place to start if you want to explore your own psychological landscape, start understanding more about your history, about who you are, and then most importantly, start taking some definitive actions so you can start moving into the world with more confidence. And as the course says, that's what it's labeled, right? Insights into understanding and mastering your behaviors. Mental health made simple. Well, it's not that simple. I mean, there's a lot of content in there, but it is presented simply. So, this is unfortunately we are now streaming directly to YouTube, which is fantastic, and we will be, of course, cross-posting at some point within the near future to Facebook as well. So that's the RD recoverydirect.net course. I highly recommend you come here, have a look at it. If you feel conflicted about paying for anything these days, and I know a lot of us do, give the first module a go. Click on it and see if the pace and the style and the comprehension is there, and then maybe it gives you a kind of a sense of what more is to come and what more you can actually get, what more value you can get. Because of course, one doesn't want to go through 11 modules and have no value. And certainly I wouldn't create a course that had no value. But also one needs to pace it because it is a lot of information. It is a lot of information. Okay, so let's go back to just kind of to end off today. We're going to kind of just talk a little bit about some of the areas that are affected, some of the areas that are affected when we are engaging with others, when we are trying to have kind of relational health, in other words, in relationships with parents or with siblings or with lovers or husbands and wives. And there's one idea in psychology that kind of can trip us up. And it's referred to as ascribed versus achieved roles. And this is an interesting area of psychology for me because it starts speaking about what I think I should be doing, what I feel from my history I should be doing, and then the ways I self-inhibit my needs and my expressions, the way I don't self-care, the way I can't ask for help, and it has a lot to do with these two ideas above me. So I'd like to talk about them briefly today. These aren't really covered in great detail in the course. They are touched on in the course, and they are definitely part of the larger course offering, but I'm going to go into a bit more detail today. In 11 modules, we crammed in a lot. So the first thing I need to say is that what is an ascribed role? What would we refer to as an ascribed role? It's a social identity or title that is given to someone kind of without their permission. You don't really have any influence over it. You don't really have it. You don't say, no, actually, I don't like that title. I don't like that role. Thanks. You can keep it. That's not how this works. Is that these are given to someone, like gender, for example. Someone will call you a boy or a girl. Age, you don't have any control over your age. You have to simply put up with your age because that's what you are. Or ethnicity, you can't say I'm one thing when you're in the other. This role is given to us by others with no input from ourselves. For example, you might be a teenager while you are between a certain age. You can't undo that label. That label then just sits on you. You may be black. That's what someone calls you if your skin tone is darker than a white person's. So you put into you're given an ascribed role. Or European, if you come from Europe, even though if you have ancestry, going into South America, if you're in Europe, you're European. And these are ascribed roles. But they get much more nuanced, much more detailed, and much more specific when they exist in family systems. And to that end, we start seeing ascribed roles happening in families. So, for example, if I'm growing up in a family and I'm always the one making everyone else tea and always the one making sure everyone else is fed, and if no one else feels like cooking in the evening, and I'm always cleaning up, people might start seeing me as the caretaker. I might not do it because I feel like a caretaker, but after a while, that ascribed role becomes something that I live and breathe and am. It doesn't mean that I actually like it. It doesn't mean it fits. It doesn't mean it's what I always wanted to do. It means that that's kind of just what happened. And we see that systems, in other words, families, individuals in a system, all tend to have ascribed roles, and that kind of holds the system together. Like you don't really need a caretaker in a family system if there's no vulnerable one. If everyone's autonomous and has agency and gets on with what they need to do, there's no need for like a caretaker. And then you have other titles such as the rock, the steady one, the one that's always okay. Or the vulnerable one, the one that's always, that person's always in distress and they're always anxious and and that might have only been from an incident in childhood. It might have been from a single incident where there was some trauma, but the person, because systems like to have these kind of titles, the person sits with that role. Or the moody one. And so you see a whole constellation of family systems. And in family systems, these systems are held together by these ascribed roles. I have to reiterate that these roles are not yours. They're not actually who you are. They're not anything that you've achieved. They're not anything that you sought out to be. They, in many ways, are given or put onto you. There's an onerous sense that they're put onto you, and you have to hold them, They're not of our choosing, and infer many qualities that may not be, and often are not, appropriate to us. For example, the rock. Is the rock really a rock? No, you're not a rock. You're not a rock. You just maybe did one or two things where you were okay in a situation and you saw people panicking, so you did the right thing. And now suddenly everyone calls you the rock, and you're the stable one, and and then what happens when you're vulnerable? What happens when you don't feel okay, or when you want to unravel? No, well, you can't, because you're the rock. Because the system needs those roles to be in place. These are often created systemically by unseen, by upheld social norms. And that's the kicker, is that this whole system kind of colludes to keep, and when I mean system, I mean families, I mean environments of people. They kind of get together to make sure, and it's unspoken, right? I mean, there might be some roles that some people say, oh yeah, he's always the joker, or they're always the sad one. Oh, here comes the moaner, But a lot of the times these roles are actually unspoken and unseen. So if some person's always the rock of the family, they just take that role, do that role, they're never allowed to let go of that role, and then eventually it becomes overwhelming, and then they have a breakdown, and everyone goes, oh, but they were the rock of the family. How did that happen? So we see that these ascribed roles are not necessarily good news at all, which is very different, of course, to the achieved role. Now, the achieved role is the one that you personally move towards. That's a role that you move towards and you become. So, for example, the achieved role is a social identity or title that an individual has earned or chosen for themselves to some degree. So it's not innate or an inborn social identity. And what do we mean by this? Well, basically things like if you're an artist or a writer, that's something you've gone and you've chosen to be. If you're a father, you had a child, and now you're a father. That's an achieved role. If you own a company and you become the CEO, you've worked in the company, you've achieved the role of CEO. And you see, this is really interesting because we saw that the opposite was the ascribed role that we have no influence over. But the achieved role is absolutely a role that you have gone out and sought to own. To be a father, to be a banker, to be an artist, to be a counselor. And these are roles that kind of come from within, that we have a lot of energy around generating this role for ourselves. And they're achieved. You can write it down. I did this thing. Whereas the ascribed role is kind of without our permission. It really is without our permission. And so we start seeing a few issues come up with roles. We have things like role conflict. What happens when two of my roles, don't get on? So on the one hand, I might be a baseball coach, ascribed role, achieved role. And then I also might be a father, which is kind of an achieved role. But a father could also be an ascribed role because you have to kind of fulfill those obligations when you have a child. And then now I want my kid, because I'm his dad, to be in a cool position in the team, but I also am in the role of baseball coach, in my achieved role. And so here we start seeing kind of where there are role conflicts, and this can happen within family systems. This can happen in your own life, within the things that you do, the vocations you have. And then sometimes there is role confusion. For example, if a college student attends a social function, encounters a teacher as a guest as opposed to a teacher. Now, are you my teacher or are you a buddy? And now I don't know, because I have different behaviors and different understandings around these roles and this system. And in the system at school, you're my teacher, but now I'm in this at this event, and suddenly you're there as as someone who's just attending this event. So we have these two different areas that become very, very difficult to navigate. But there are a few more. There is role strain, and that is when we have issues at or distress with the kind of roles that are required of us. So, for example, when someone or father has a child, you can have that role, but if you're carrying 5 or 6 other roles, 1 or 2 of them might become extremely strained. And this goes to not even the achieved roles like being a mother or father, but what happens if you're the rock of the family? What if you have that ascribed role? And then after 5, 10 years, you're like, it's wearing me down. I also need time off. I also need to be able to do it. So we see that role strain is also a very, very important indicator. I want to show you some of the work here, or some of the writing at least, by Elizabeth Hopper from thoughtco.com. And she doesn't say these are right or wrong necessarily, but these are some of the ways we try and cope with role strain when the roles become too overwhelming for us. The first thing is people try and not think about the conflict between different roles. They just try and, when I'm with my parents, I am the perfect child, I'm the perfect A-star ascribed role, When I'm with my friends, I'm the joker, and I kind of compartmentalize them. And so I try not to spend time with my family and my friends together. I draw a hard line between the two. And that can be very interesting, I think, because it can be very taxing. It can be very taxing, and also it's not very congruent. You aren't able to be the same person all the time. You have to fabricate a version of yourself. Compartmentalizing is very common to deal with this role strain. The first thing to do, of course, is to try and remove as many roles as possible, and that's one of the things people do. So if we look at delegating to others, sometimes this is really a really good way of operating with too many roles. If you find the roles are becoming oppressive or there's a lot of role strain, what one can do is delegate parts of the role to the other. Now, in relationships with two parents, this should be happening all the time. And certainly in businesses, it should be happening if someone is overloaded. But if I'm the guy who always like, oh, give me your excess work to do, I'll sort you out. Or if someone comes to me and says, oh, I got my wife's birthday tonight and I forgot to get a gift, will you just do the rest of this paperwork for me? If I'm doing that the whole time, it's going to be very hard for me to offset my own strain. I'm not going to be delegating. I'm going to tend to be the one that kind of takes on all of the strain, increasing it and not delegating it. And of course, what is very useful, and I think and this is talking in some ways about a vocation role, a work role, but I mean this also, I invite you to think about this giving up a role also in the roles of, the vulnerable one or the sickly one or the happy one or the caretaker. I mean the systemic roles we have in our families. Giving up a role means that if it isn't essential and actually it doesn't suit me, I can actually give it up. You see that in business when people going from being the workaholic to someone with work-life balance. The workaholic, the ascribed role, to work-life balance, an achieved role. So it's a role I've chosen. So we give up a role or we turf it for a role that is more appropriate. And I think these are all really important to kind of spend some time thinking about, because we know that often when we have role confusion or role strain, there's a huge amount of needless kind of energy that has to be expended. For example, when parents first get together, they're just dating and the roles are as partners. Then along comes children, perhaps, if that happens, and then as a parent. And then maybe I'm at work as well, so there's roles there. And the more and more roles we pile on, the more and more difficult it becomes. So the last thing we need is roles that don't actually suit us. Also, asking for help in getting mental health means that taking some of those roles and getting rid of them. For example, do I really have to be the rock? Do I always have to be the vulnerable one? Does this really, really suit me? So some of the questions, there's a few more strategies that Elizabeth Hopper outlines here. Taking on a new role. So this is the one that I mean about, she's talking about a vocation here, but I'm talking about like going from like being the rock of the family going, actually, that's not who I am. I'd rather be seen as someone, kind of less reliable. Not less reliable, but not the only one you're going to turn to. And the other one she talks about is avoiding unnecessary interruptions while working in a role. And sometimes this is work-related. If I have a certain role, then I don't let other people kind of dump their role requirements. I don't let them delegate the stuff on me. And these are all the ways that we can certainly deal with strain. So I'd like to leave you, if I may, with a few questions around roles. What kind of roles do you have? Which roles do you find? Are you like the renegade? Are you the scapegoat? Are you the happy-go-lucky one? Think about the way you think the world describes you, or perhaps what you think you have to live up to be the strong one. To be I'm always the miserable. Think about those roles. So first point of exercise is just list them. Simply list them down. And once you have your list, put next to them, do these roles work for me? To the miserable one, yes, no. Okay. The rock, yes, no. Whatever these roles might be, do they work for me? What I mean by that is do they cause me role strain? Do they cause me unnecessary role strain? So if I'm the rock and caretaker and always looking after people, that role will cause you role strain. Do you identify with them? And this is an interesting question, because what it's asking is that, have you fully integrated this ascribed role into you? And is it very difficult to act or believe or think in a way that is outside of that role? And then finally, do you struggle to act, this is the same point, do you struggle to behave, think, or feel outside of that role? So when you are sick, do you still go to work? when you are unhappy, do you still always just smile because you're the happy one? And this is important because all of this will add to role strain, which eventually will cause intrapsychic, which is of the mind, in the psyche, in our hearts and our mind. It will cause us a huge amount of distress. So that is going to be us for today, for this Friday Connect. It's our first stream on YouTube. I suspect a lot of people are going to be watching this post the fact. So for those of you that are watching post the fact, I should be saying hello now. I mean, I should say hello. I can say hello now as opposed to hello earlier. But I hope you've enjoyed the small amount of kind of psychoeducation around the different roles, and also a kind of quite clear overview of what the recoverydirect.net course has. So to remind you, go to the website, have a look, see which of these courses might work for you. Try the mental health one out. Try the first module. See if that works for you, and if it does, allow yourself to spend some money on yourself and your own mental health. Allow yourself to take some action towards helping yourself. And of course, the healthier we are, the healthier our relationships are, the healthier our friends eventually and family become. Because when people have good, strong mental health and agency and a sense of purpose and drive, that tends to be quite magnetic. And it tends to affect the world around us as well. So finally, all I have to say is you're all beautiful. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. You are worthy. You are enough. And this weekend, I want you to make like Madonna and express yourself. And we will see you live here on YouTube on Monday at 12:10. South African Standard Time. So that's 12:10 midday, 10 past 12, midday South African Standard Time on Monday. I hope you can all join us then. Have a wonderful weekend. Goodbye.